Okay, so we get to Holland. This is 1988, and I realized I still want to do more flying. So flying for the Dutch was like getting my graduate degree in flying. It was amazing. We would leave Amsterdam and basically go around the world with a credit card and a DC tent. And everywhere we went, they would leave the airplane in one place, grab a airline, fly as passengers to another place, pick up another airplane, and just do that around the world, and then come back, get a 5, 6 days off, and then do it all over again. So it was an amazing experience. It was like graduating from professional flying. So they, at one point, they asked me if I wanted to stay permanent with them. So I made a list. I remember making a list. It was like a 2-page list. And after a year or so flying with them, I had completed all the items except 2
What was the list?
of the things I still wanted to do flying. And
do you remember what was on the list?
Just a ton of things.
Or what stands out?
No, nothing. I've done, just a bunch of stuff that I wanted to do, places I wanted to go, things like that. But eventually, there were only 2 items left, and they had to do with flying the new 747. So I went to Singapore Airlines and for an interview, and that's where I realized that it wasn't what I wanted. So at least I completed that item. So then I said it just wasn't worth staying in flying just for 1 or 2 items on a list for the next 20, 30 years. So I turned down the offer, and we went back to Hawaii. While I was in Holland, though, I felt at home. I could already understand Dutch. I made a lot of good friends. I was even the first pilot from Martinair to do the Ironman, first Ironman in Holland. One of the captains actually was hoping to do it himself in a few years, and he actually ran the marathon with me. Good friends. I mean, I just had good friends all over.
You started at speed skating, I remember.
I was learning how to ice skate because I wanted to do that race for the 200-mile race from town to town, but the winters we were there, it never froze enough. So I would have, if we would have stayed, we would have made a good life there. It would have just been different. And we still wanted to go back to Hawaii. So at the end, I said, okay, I'm done with flying. I don't need it anymore. And it was a real feeling because we went back to Hawaii, and I never thought about it again. I think the first 15 years in Hawaii, I didn't even leave the islands. We got back in '89. I think my first trip out of the islands was in 2006 or something like that, when I went to California. So I didn't really have any more motivation. Once in a while, a friend of mine would call and say, hey, I'm the head pilot of an airline in Rome. You want to come fly for us? And for a couple of weeks, I'd be all excited. And then I would think about how much flying had changed, how going to the airport had changed. And just didn't, and things would fizzle out. I said, no, thanks, I'm good. So I went back to academics.
But before, is there any what places did you fly to when you were with Martinair?
Oh, I flew all over the world. We would just leave Amsterdam and just fly around the world, literally fly around the world.
What were some of your favorite?
Well, not so much favorites. I mean, I like them all. We flew all over Europe. We flew in the Middle East, Asia. I went to Pakistan. I went to Thailand. I went to Australia. I went to Hong Kong, China, New Zealand, a bunch of places.
What were the Dutch pilots like?
Great. They were friendly, professional, much more professional. It was a much more professional experience than with the Venezuelan airline. That was more relaxed, more Venezuelan, I guess. So it was great. It was just great.
What
Uh,
about the Ironman, the Dutch Ironman? How did you train for that? And
well, I biked all over the place. Sometimes I get back from a flight, let's say, you know, in the middle of summer, and I'd have the time difference, and I would just go out on my bike at 2 in the morning, because for me it was daytime with a time difference, and then bike till 6 in the morning. It was perfect. It was safe. I really liked Holland. It was really, really nice. So I could have seen myself staying there, except, you know, I had already done what I wanted to do in flying, so there wasn't much more to do. And so I saw a lot of my friends continue flying, and it's a tough life living out of a hotel, the food, the stuff, and you know, once you've done it enough, it hits you hard, and then you just have to continue because you don't have a choice. But in my case, I had a choice. I could go back to teaching and academics.
how many years total did you fly then?
About 16 years, so over 11,000 jet hours.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I flew as captain, I flew as co-pilot, as flight engineer. Um, yeah, it was great. Um, so after that, when we decided to leave, I told him I was leaving, so we went back to Hawaii. And initially, I had to start, you know, working odd jobs just to make a living. We had money in the bank, but it wasn't enough to live off, so I had to work something, and I did. And
Was it Honolulu Mortgage time?
yeah, I Honolulu mortgage, and then but then slowly I started again, because when I had first been in Hawaii, we were there for a year. I flew tours around the islands. I had so much fun with that, and small airplanes. I hadn't really flown any small airplanes. Everything was always jets and fast and high. So I had a good time. I think I always call it my 100 missions around the islands. Made up all kinds of stories, got to know the islands really well. And at the same time, I got hooked up with Hawaii Pacific University and started teaching some classes at the military bases for them. So when we went to Holland, I just said I wasn't available, but they still had me in the books. So when I came back, I called them up and said I was available again, and they started calling me for classes. So then after like a year and a half at Honolulu Mortgage, I was teaching part-time. And then I said, let me apply at one of the community colleges at University of Hawaii. And I did, and for a part-time position as lecturer. And I remember saying, I've got the HPU classes. I've got 2 classes for fall at Kapilani Community College. I need 1 more, and I can quit Honolulu Mortgage. And a week before classes started, they called me up and they gave me the 3rd class. And I never looked back. After that, they gave me 5 class full-time in both places, full-time load in both places.
Teaching what?
At math and physics, astronomy, computer science, international business. I was part of the MBA program, teaching the math for the MBA program. So all big variety of stuff.
Military campus, right?
Military campus, sometimes at the downtown campus, the Hawaii Loa campus sometimes, and then KCC also. And that's where I stayed for, and with, with the University of Hawaii, they gave me free tuition. So every semester I would take 6 credits of graduate work. First I started taking in Vina. First I started taking classes in I forget it, in oceanography.
Oceanography, I remember.
That was my first one. And then meteorology. And in meteorology, I started getting serious. I said, maybe I should, because I hadn't finished my doctorate at NYU,
Mm-hmm.
even though I finished my degree in Venezuela, it wasn't the equivalent. So I started taking math classes. I got serious with it. But I remember I met one of the professors at UH had been at NYU. So we used to always talk. We were good friends. He knew I was a professor over at HPU. And one day I told him, I said, I just don't feel like going for the PhD in math because it's just like jumping all these hoops that I already jumped. And, I don't have the passion for doing that just to get to the thesis part, which is what I didn't finish. And he said, well, do you need it for your job? I said, no, I already am a professor. He said, so why don't you find something else? So we sat together, we looked at the stuff I liked in math, and we said, hey, if you went into quantum physics, that would be an alternative. So I decided to take a graduate course in quantum physics, part two, with ever having taken any quantum physics, but I had the math. And then since they gave me 6 credits, I said, oh, let me sign up for something else. I signed up for a cosmology class. Amazing how the universe sends you what you need, because I ended up with a scale, quantum physics, the smallest scale, cosmology, the largest, and those are my 2 favorite areas of study. They became my 2 favorite areas. And so I took that and I got all excited. I started taking classes in the physics and astronomy department. Eventually I asked to be admitted in, and I got my master's in 2001. And then I started working for the professor that I had taken quantum physics with for the PhD. And that took a while because, I was working full-time at HPU, had a full-time load at KCC, and then trying to get a PhD. So instead of doing it in the usually there it was, the average time was 7 years. It took me a couple more, 2 more, which is fine. I mean, I passed my quals, I defended my orals, defended my theses, everything. And the thesis was good. I was doing good research.
What was the area?
It had to do with supersymmetry, and it was a avant-garde research for the Large Hadron Collider in Geneva, which fired up in 2011 when I was finishing. My advisor recommended that I pursue other areas, and which I started doing. I got into quantum computing, and then in math, since 2000 I got involved with number theory, which I had stayed away from all my life. I was scared that I would get obsessed with it. So when I was at NYU math, I never touched it. I was just afraid I would become totally obsessed with numbers and stuff. It was my weakness. And then, but then once I was teaching, the universe kept saying, we want you to teach number theory, we want to teach this. So eventually I started, and I realized I could control it. And that's what I've been doing since 2000, focusing on number theory and in physics and particle physics, cosmology, all the high energy stuff. So that's what I did. Then in 2017, I'd been at University of Hawaii for 27 years. I decided to apply for the NSA as a mathematician. The job offer was for Hawaii. So I think I applied in 2016. And then, the process is like a 2-year process. But once the year went by, all I was missing was like the final interview, and things were looking good. So I decided to retire from the University of Hawaii so I could free up my days to work for the NSA, and I could still continue at night with HPU in the military campuses. It was fun. The whole process was fun because you had to be vetted, security clearances, all kinds of stuff. And all my students were either involved with that, they're all military, or some of them were even examiners or inspectors. So they all got involved with my process. So it was fun. It became fun. Eventually, I went for my last interview. It was 2018, March, in Maryland at the facility. It was an amazing experience. I got to see the famous cube where all the computers, that was Dan Brown's, what was it called?
Dementia?
The Digital Fortress. He wrote a book on it. That he gets kidnapped. I actually got to go there. I would walk into a room and they would turn the lights on, and then people would cover their computers and all kinds of stuff. And I had somebody escort me all day. And I had to give a talk. So I gave a talk on a theorem that I had come up with in number theory. And everybody was amazed with it. So I thought it might be something somebody might have discovered many years ago. Everything looks so simple when you see it like that. But everybody said it was first time. So I said, oh, so it served its purpose. It got me through the interview. But then this was the time when funds were frozen. The job started shifting from Hawaii to Maryland, and it was up in the air. So, things just kind of fizzled out. And which I guess it wasn't meant to be. I had told them I would go work in Hawaii or in San Antonio. So, but at least it was good enough for me to accept change, because for 27 years I've been doing the same thing there. Obviously, teaching at both places, going to school at the third place, doing all my sports, all my water sports. So change was hard, but that got me ready for change. So when the pandemic came, and with all the isolation and everything, we decided it was time to move where all the family was, and that was no big deal anymore. I felt like just like I left aviation, I had already done everything I wanted to do in Hawaii, so it was time to go. So we moved to Texas.
How many credits do you think you've taught or classes?
I've taught over 2,000 credits.
2,000 credits?
And I have over 500 graduate credits to my name. So that's like the equivalent of 17 masters.
And how many different areas of teaching?
Let's see. I've taught in
Can you list them?
mathematics, physics, astronomy, computer science, engineering, international business, and quantitative methods in the MBA program. So 7 different areas. Come here to Texas and